What kind of neighborhood watch pulls a gun on a woman who trains elite soldiers? The question hung heavy in my mind as I stood frozen on our front lawn, the evening sun casting long shadows across the manicured grass of Willow Creek. HOA Karen, as the neighbors called her, wasn't just the HOA president. She was a force of nature, a 5'2" tornado of complaints and clipboard tyranny. Her real name was Karenkarma, but the nickname stuck because she embodied every stereotype: loud, nosy, and utterly convinced she was the law. Tonight, though, she'd crossed a line that turned our quiet cul-de-sac into a battlefield. My wife, Lena, stood 10 feet away, her hands raised, her jaw tight, staring down the barrel of a shaky pistol held by one of Karen's security team, a glorified mall cop named Rick who looked like he'd never fired a gun in his life. The air was thick with tension, neighbors peeking through blinds, phones recording from safe distances. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was war. It started innocently enough, or so I thought. Lena and I had moved to Willow Creek 6 months ago, craving a quiet life after years of military postings. Lena, a retired Special Forces trainer, was used to high-stakes environments, but she wanted peace, a place to plant roses and maybe adopt a dog. I'm just a high school history teacher, happy to follow her lead. The neighborhood seemed perfect: neat lawns, friendly waves, kids on bikes. But HOA Karen had other plans. From day one, she'd zeroed in on us. Our mailbox was non-compliant because it leaned slightly to the left. Our car was parked an inch too close to the curb. She'd show up unannounced, her signature clipboard in hand, rattling off violations with a smug grin. Lena, ever the diplomat, tried to play nice, but I could see her patience fraying. Karen didn't know who she was dealing with. Lena had faced down warlords and trained men to survive hell. A suburban dictator wasn't going to faze her. The trouble really started 2 weeks ago. Lena had been teaching free self-defense classes in our backyard for some of the neighborhood kids, mostly teens who'd been bullied or felt unsafe. It was her way of giving back, using her skills to build confidence. The sessions were small, quiet, just a handful of kids practicing basic moves. But Karen got wind of it and decided it was disorderly conduct. She sent us a cease and desist letter on official HOA letterhead, claiming the classes were a public safety hazard. Lena laughed it off at first, but when Karen started showing up during sessions, barking orders to stop, things got heated. Last week, Karen caught Lena's elbow during a demonstration and claimed she'd been assaulted. That's when Rick and his buddy Dave, Karen's self-appointed enforcement officers, started patrolling our street like they were SWAT. They weren't real cops, just power-hungry volunteers with cheap badges and cheaper egos. Tonight, it all came to a head. Lena was in the driveway, unloading groceries, when Karen marched up with Rick and Dave in tow. I was inside, grading papers, when I heard shouting. By the time I got outside, Rick had his gun out, pointing it at Lena's chest. Karen was screaming about trespassing and threats to community safety, her face red, her finger jabbing the air. Lena stood calm, her hands up, but I could see the steel in her eyes, the same look she got before disarming a hostile in training. "Put the gun down," she said, her voice low. "Steady." Rick's hand shook, his face pale, but Karen egged him on. "She's dangerous." Karen shrieked. "She's a threat." I wanted to rush forward, but Lena's glance told me to stay back. This was her fight. The truth started to unravel in whispers around the neighborhood. Karen's reign wasn't just about rules. It was personal. Years ago, She tried to join the military, dreaming of a career like Lena's. But she'd washed out of basic training. The rejection stung. And Lena fit. Confident. A living symbol of everything Karen couldn't be became her obsession. Neighbors started talking. Karen had spread rumors that Lena was running an illegal operation in our backyard, that she was training delinquents to cause trouble. She'd even called the real police, but they dismissed her complaints as petty. So Karen took matters into her own hands, arming her lackeys and turning our street into her personal fiefdom. The twist hit me like a punch. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules, she was settling a score. Lena's strength, her quiet authority, was a mirror to Karen's failures, and she couldn't stand it. The standoff in the driveway was a powder keg. Rick's finger twitched on the trigger, and I felt my heart stop. Lena didn't flinch. "You don't want to do this," she said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Karen's screams grew louder. But now neighbors were stepping out. Phones raised. Voices rising. "Put it down. Rick." Someone yelled. Dave, the other officer, looked like he wanted to bolt. Karen's control was slipping. But she doubled down, accusing Lena of inciting violence. That's when Lena spoke. Her words calm but lethal. "I train soldiers to protect, not harm. You're the one pointing a gun at an unarmed woman." The crowd murmured, shifting. Rick's gun wavered. Karen's face twisted, realizing she was losing the narrative. Then, a siren wailed in the distance. The real cops were coming. The sirens grew louder, red and blue lights flashing as two police cars pulled into the cul-de-sac. Karen's bravado faltered, but she tried to spin the story, rushing toward the officers with her clipboard, shouting about threats and vigilantes. Lena lowered her hands slowly, her eyes never leaving Rick, who finally holstered his gun, his face flushed with shame. The neighbors pressed closer, their phones still recording, their voices a chorus of outrage. The real police, two seasoned officers with no patience for Karen's theatrics, listened as she ranted. Then they turned to Lena. "Ma'am, can you tell us what happened?" one asked. Lena's response was measured, factual, every word a testament to her training under pressure. She explained the self-defense classes, Karen's harassment, the escalation to tonight's armed standoff. I chimed in, my voice shaking but clear, recounting Karen's months of targeting us. The officers' faces hardened as they turned to Rick, who stammered, claiming he felt threatened. Karen's lies were unraveling, and she knew it. The confrontation shifted as the truth took hold. The neighbors, once silent, found their courage. Mrs. Patel, a quiet widow from across the street, spoke up. "Karen's been bullying everyone for years," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "She fined me for my roses being too tall. She threatened to tow my son's car for parking in our own driveway." Others joined in, a flood of grievances spilling out, petty fines, intimidation, Karen's obsession with control. The officers took notes, their expressions grim. Rick and Dave were separated, questioned, their cheap badges confiscated. Karen tried to interrupt, but one officer cut her off. "Ma'am, you're not helping yourself." The crowd's anger turned to whispers of relief. For the first time, Karen looked small, her clipboard dangling uselessly at her side. The collapse came swiftly. The police found that Rick's security license was a Jokean online certificate from a shady website. His gun, though legal, was carried without proper training, a violation that earned him a citation and a confiscated weapon. Karen's HOA authority, it turned out, was built on a house of cards. The bylaws didn't allow for armed patrols or unilateral fines, and her enforcement team was a clear overreach. The officers informed her that the HOA board would be investigated, and she could face charges for inciting the standoff. Karen's face crumpled, her voice reduced to a whine. I was protecting the neighborhood, she insisted, but no one was listening. The neighbors, emboldened, began planning to vote her out. Lena, ever composed, thanked the officers and the crowd, her strength a quiet rebuke to Karen's chaos. As the police cars pulled away, the cul-de-sac felt different, lighter, like a storm had passed. Lena and I sat on our porch, the adrenaline fading, the night air cool against our skin. She took my hand, her grip steady, and I saw the weight of the evening in her eyes. I've faced worse, she said softly, but this one hurt. I knew what she meant. War zones were one thing. Betrayal by your own community was another. But something had shifted in Willow Creek. The next day, Mrs. Patel brought over a tray of samosas, an apology for staying silent too long. The teens from Lena's classes showed up with a thank you note, vowing to keep training. A petition to dissolve the HOA's overreach gained traction, and by the end of the week, Karen resigned, her reign of terror over. She moved away a month later. Her house sold to a young couple who waved instead of glaring. Lena's classes grew, not just for kids, but for adults. Two neighbors who wanted to feel safe again, to reclaim their strength. I watched her teach, her voice steady, her movements precise, and I saw what she'd always been, a protector, a teacher, a light in the dark. Willow Creek wasn't perfect, but it was ours again, a place where courage could bloom like roses. We'd faced down a gun, a tyrant, and our own fears, and we'd won not with fists, but with truth and community. Lena smiled at me one evening, her eyes bright. We're home, she said, and for the first time, I believed it. End.